Can you describe to me what it's like to be on one of those boards and how it feels to go 40 kilometers per hour on water?
Like, you've got nothing, you're just standing on like an ironing board, and the only thing in the water is this tiny little hydrofoil.
But what do you do with your adrenaline? Because it must be surging through your veins.
Everyone always said, like, oh, was that the most nerve-wracking time of your whole life? And I was like, it actually wasn't, because it didn't feel like it was real.
And you could argue that that was a big risk to take as
well.
Yeah.
Huge. Then I had to shift it to like always having food with me, always having, basically I had to almost be obsessed with it. If the British team can win, I think it'll be amazing for the sport.
So Ellie, what a summer you've already had. I can't believe that it could get bigger and better, but it might get bigger and better come October when you're involved in the first ever Women's America's Cup event for the British team, which would be extraordinary to see how that unfolds. But speaking to everybody about their moment in time and a moment which may have changed the path of everything that came afterwards, I feel like yours is so much more recent than anybody else's. I mean, I don't really need to ask you, but what is it and why?
It would be winning an Olympic gold medal 2 weeks ago. Just because, I mean, it speaks for itself, I think. Yeah. So
take us back to, I suppose, let's go back to the day of the finals, because that's probably where, you know, the crescendo moment, and it's really all got to come together on that day. You took up this sport, 6 years ago or something like that. So if just put into context what the morning's like of a competition where you're heading into what will be, if you win, which you did ultimately do, but if you win, your name is forever attached to the first ever Formula Kite Olympic gold medal, which is extraordinary. So how do you wake up on a morning like that and prepare yourself for what comes next? What did that all feel like?
I mean, to be honest, the whole week had been like quite drawn out. It had been really, really light wind, so there was a lot of waiting around, a lot of postponements, a lot of kind of getting down to the beach and then being like, oh, there's no wind, we'll just wait around for a bit, we'll just wait around. So I think, if anything, it's quite good because it gets you into a routine of kind of not being rushed and having to be quite relaxed, because if you're not relaxed and then you wait around for 4 hours on the beach, you just get a bit angsty and like.
But what do you do with your adrenaline? Because it must be surging through your veins, and there's clearly, you know, positives to that. But how do you sort of manage that energy?
You have, to an extent, you kind of have to block it out a bit at the right times. I think for me, I went straight into the final. So if you're in first and second, you go straight into the final, and that's always like a huge relief, because if you're in third or less, there's like a very good chance you won't actually get into the final and you'll completely miss out on medals altogether. So if you can make it in the final, it's quite it's a lot more chilled. I think if I hadn't gone in second or first, I would have been a lot more stressed out than I was. But I think if you go in those positions, you've got a much better chance of getting a medal. So I was a bit more relaxed than I think a lot of other people.
But it's the Olympics.
Yeah.
So does that bring with it a different sort of sense of anticipation, a different sort of a different set of nerves? It's not a home games, but it's near as damn it, because it's only in Marseille, and you know everyone's flooded down there, and your family. Did you feel the pressure of the occasion, the pressure of the day to perform?
I did a little bit, but we'd been there for so long already. Like, we were the last event to start, so a lot of the other classes had finished before we'd even started. That was really spread out Olympics. So we had quite a lot of time being there, getting used to everything, getting used to the crowd cheering every single time you leave the beach, like all these other things that you would never normally have at a normal event. So I think I was kind of just in the morning I was trying to treat it as any other day. Just be as normal as I could.
But you were really dominant that day as well. So, you know, does that, again, everyone sort of talks about, you know, that winning mindset and, you know, winning, breeding the confidence piece and everything else. I mean, did you feel calm throughout the day, or sort of how the races unfolded? What was, you know, do you dare to let yourself dream in those moments? Was there a moment where you went, oh my God, I might actually end up winning this first ever Olympic Formula Kite gold?
No, I didn't think about that at all.
Well, how do you block that out?
I'm quite good at it. maybe that's why I'm good at what I do. But I don't know. I think it can be a good thing and a bad thing at different times. But I don't know. I think when you're on the water, yeah, there might only be 4 of you out there and 10 million spectator boats and camera boats everywhere. But it is still just racing. And you kind of just got to go back to what you have done, all the training you've done and all the preparation you've done, and almost like go into a complete state of like not thinking about anything. You just do what you've always done.
Can you describe to me what it's like to be on one of those boards and how it feels to go 40 kilometers per hour on water?
It is very fun. It's very different to sailing though. I think when you're on a boat, you've got loads of things rattling around you. You've got like the boat's vibrating when you're going really fast. Like there's a lot of sensation, whereas kite foiling is quite a lot more peaceful in a weird way. Like you've got nothing. You're just standing on like an ironing board, and the only thing in the water is this tiny little hydrofoil, and it's very smooth. There's like maybe a little whistle from the foil, but it's very, I don't know. Yeah, it's a bit more kind of serene than if you were going, I don't know, 30 knots in a boat. Yeah, it's weird.
What was the feeling like as you crossed that finishing line and you knew that you'd taken the gold medal?
I couldn't believe it. Like literally, that whole day kind of just felt like I was asleep still, or like it felt like I was in a dream, and I was like, yeah, any second now I'm just gonna wake up and it'll be the morning. It was unbelievable. I can't even, especially that last race and the last downwind and onto the reach. Everyone always said like, oh, was that the most nerve-wracking time of your whole life? And I was like, it actually wasn't, because it didn't feel like it was real. Like the sensations just weren't really, it was almost like I was numb. And it was just, yeah, it was so bizarre.
Was it as perfect? I mean, you're the person on the board having to steer and do whatever you're doing to make things happen. Was it as perfect a race as you possibly could have hoped for?
Yeah, I think so. I think those 2 races were to be, yeah, I don't think I could have done much wrong.
And when the dust settles and when, you realise that you're Olympic champion, what does it do for you? Has it changed you? It's only been a couple of weeks, like you say, since you've taken that medal, but there would have been a ton of media to do afterwards, a ton of attention. I remember speaking to Helen Glover about this, and she said at her first games, you don't realise at the time, but you're anonymous for a period of time, and then suddenly you're not if you actually make the result happen. So have you felt this big change occur? Does it feel like something seismic has happened beyond what you did on the water?
Yeah, I suppose so. Mainly from media stuff, and everywhere I go, people kind of know who. Well, not everywhere I go, but a lot of people know who I am, who I don't know who they are. That's quite new, and a lot of people just coming up and chatting and things is really nice. But I'm quite lucky. A lot of my friends at home they're very grounding. They're kind of like, they joke about it a lot. They're like, oh, well done, you won something, which is actually really nice because it brings you back down to earth and makes you feel a bit more normal again.
But it's crazy to think that like just 6 years ago you were, how did you embark on your kite adventure? Like, where did that come from? How did it start? Who was part of that journey with you?
Hello, performance people, listeners. My name is Freddie Carr, and I host a podcast called The Inside Tack, which is a podcast that follows the British America's Cup team, INEOS Britannia, as we get ready for the 37th America's Cup down here in Barcelona. We also follow the youth and the first ever Women's America's Cup. We would love you to like and subscribe to our podcast. Follow us on all your social media channels as we get ready for our sporting challenge of a lifetime.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy one. I was sailing the 49er FX before, And the RWA started up this talent ID search to find female kite surfers because they kind of knew that kite foiling was going to be in the Olympics. It wasn't confirmed yet, but they kind of wanted to try and get a bit ahead of the game. And I wasn't even going to apply for it because I was in a 49er FX campaign. Like, it was all, I had never thought about stopping or anything. It's kind of felt like the beginning of our journey. But then I was like, oh, right, I could kite surf a bit for fun. And I just thought I'd apply just because, like, what's the harm in applying for something? And then suddenly a load of people were talking to me about doing it. And then I kind of thought about it slightly more seriously. And I was like, I don't know, maybe this is an opportunity that I should actually think about. And then I thought about it a bit more and kind of started doing some of the training weekends and kind of thought that I could maybe do both of them, or I could learn to kite foil alongside my 49er campaign, just to like see how it goes. Because I mean, I literally just still learning how to foil. It was very, very early days. But it actually quite a lot sooner than I thought. They basically said, you've got to pick which one you do, which was it was an interesting call. And that really made me think about it. I was like, wow, I hadn't really thought about it this seriously at all. And it made me kind of, question everything that I was doing and everything I wanted to do and the direction I wanted to go in my career. But
that's a bit of a sort of sliding doors moment, right? Because
Yeah.
if you go right and choose this pathway, that's that direction, and left, that's that direction. So what swung it?
I literally couldn't tell you one thing that's made me want to. I think, to be honest, the one thing that really intrigued me was doing a single-handed campaign again. A long time ago used to sail single-handed, and I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, I'm never sailing with someone. I'm independent. I'm going to do this myself. And then started sailing with other people, and I was like, actually, this is great. I love having a partner. I love being in a team and doing things together. And then I think it just intrigued me to go to run the show again, just myself. And also to do something completely new. That was a big opportunity to do something that was really fun, really exciting, something that no one really knew what it was going to look like. And I think that sort of sense of adventure kind of drew me into it. And then, the next week I said goodbye to the 49er and started something completely new that was so bizarre to begin with.
And you could argue that was a big risk to take as well.
Yeah. Huge. But I think in some things I do, I'm quite risky in if I think it's something that could be fun and could be a big opportunity. I didn't really think about it as a risk, but it was, yeah.
And there's a huge amount of effort that goes into obviously learning something new and then becoming the best in the world at something new, obviously. But also a lifestyle issue there as well. And you've been really vocal about this. And I think it's a really important point to make is that, the weight issue and how heavy you have to be to make the foil more productive and go quicker in the water is an issue for women in this class. So moving forward, I mean, can you see is LA too far on the horizon to sort of commit to? But, on what terms would you entertain the idea of that? Because you've got your Olympic gold, but if you wanted to double down and go for it again, that means a major lifestyle choice, doesn't it, for you as a woman?
Yeah. So, back when we first started kite foiling, that was actually, I guess, one of the small things that made me want to go kite foiling was that we thought weight didn't matter. I was crewing an FX and I was kind of struggling to be heavy enough. And the idea of being able to do something new where I didn't have to be on weight gain was like a big tick box. So we did the first kind of few years of kite foiling just learning how to do it, not thinking it was going to be an issue. And then it's basically just, I think everyone kind of knew in the back of their head that it would be a feature. And the past few years it's become very much apparent that if you're heavier, you're faster.
So what does that look like as a female athlete, except for just ingesting a ton of food on a regular basis to try and give yourself that weight gain? What does it compromise? I
mean, for me, it was a huge lifestyle change in everything I did. Like, I'm not someone that is mad on nutrition. Well, I wasn't mad on nutrition. I wasn't that much of a foodie, I guess. Like, I just love being active. I love doing things, and I'd eat when I needed to, or when I was hungry, or whatever. And I basically had to shift like my mentality into, or like, I'd never have food with me. I'd never think about food until I needed to. But then I had to shift it to like always having food with me, always having, basically I had to almost be obsessed with it to be able to do it
So
properly.
what did you eat? So leading up to that Olympics, what did you eat in any given day to give you what you needed?
I'd have 2 like high calorie protein shakes a day, which were making me feel a bit sick by the end of it. I was using creatine quite a bit to try and keep liquid in my body, just to help weight. And then it's basically just, especially when it comes around to events, I'm not very good at eating anyway, but it's just like not necessarily eating crap. Like, I hate eating unhealthy food, but it's just trying to eat as much as you can. So you get to the point where you're full, and then you just keep going. You have to keep going. And yeah.
And you said to me you've not done cardio for like 2 years.
Yeah.
Which as an athlete just doesn't make any sense to me. You can't get your head around that. Like, an athlete, it feels like that's built into your routine and lifestyle. Of course it is.
Crazy. Especially me, like I kind of like doing like, I love it. But it got to a point where we were just like, well, I'm pretty sure I'm fit enough. I know I'm not going to lose my baseline fitness by not doing it, but the calories I'm going to lose are going to be too much. Like, I just couldn't eat enough, let alone enough to add on to the cardio I'd done, like, to balance it out. So we kind of slowly kind of faded out, and then I got to the point where I was just like, well, I'm in way too deep now. I can't not try and go for this like 100%. And I think, to be honest, a lot of the other girls in the fleet were similar in that not many people thought it was a weight-based sport. And then suddenly it does become weight-based and everyone's in way too deep. They're like, well, I probably wouldn't have started this if I knew this was how it was going to be, but we're here now and we're trying to go to the Olympics, so you've got to give everything you can. It's only for another 2 or 3 years, and then we can figure out what we're going to do after that. But
so ahead of 2028, I think this is an important point to make. What would your message be to the powers that be that construct what the rules are and how it's governed in your kite class, so that there can be parity for the women?
It's a real tricky one. I mean, I would definitely say that I think the kit should have been changed, but unfortunately it's too late for that now.
Too late for 2028?
Yeah, we change equipment every 4 years, but the new equipment's already out, so people are already starting to train on the new stuff, which, yeah, I think is a bit of a missed opportunity. But to be honest, it's a really tricky one. I think the only real thing they can do is maybe a weight limit or a equalizing weight somehow to make it a little bit fairer. I think it's fine in the general sense, but as soon as you get like a few anomalies outside of the norm or outside of the normal range, then it becomes really obvious, and it's quite demoralizing for everyone else. I mean, let alone the girls are a lot smaller than me. Like, I'm not in any sense like the smallest in the fleet at all. But I've seen a lot of girls kind of start at the same time, one of them really small, one of them big, and the bigger girls just are able to pick up a lot easier and get to the front of the fleet a lot quicker. So,
I mean, it's too early probably to say, but LA 2028, do you see yourself defending that Olympic title?
I'd like to. I like the idea of it. I really want to if I can. But yeah, I want to try and figure out a way to see if there's any way to get around the weight problem and see if I can not do another 4 years on weight gain, because it's a long time.
It is a long time. Like you say, it's a huge commitment, any Olympic cycle. Another big commitment and another big cycle is the America's Cup cycle, which you're involved in, this first ever. I mean, it feels like there are firsts all over your calendar year, but the first ever Women's America's Cup taking place in Barcelona on these waters in the not so distant future. How do you feel about being involved in that setup, and what would it mean to you if you guys were able to pull it off and win that first title?
Oh, it's amazing. It's really, really nice to be part of such an amazing team. All the sailors and all the shore crew are incredible, and it's yeah, as you say, like the first time this has ever happened is very historic. I think it would be definitely one for the history books at the end of it. And if the British team can win, I think it'll be amazing for the sport, like for sailing and for female sport, I think.
Lovely. Ellie, thanks so much. And good luck.
Thanks.
Join us for the Performance People podcast every week for the highs, lows, lessons and stories from people like this lot. Michael Johnson.
Some days what I would see is a person who is a shell of what I used to be.
Eddie Hearn.
We don't operate in a business that's dangerous, but we just operate in one where you've got to sleep with one eye open.
Mo Farah.
It couldn't get any harder than what I've gone through, and at that point I just went for it.
Paula Radcliffe.
You can only control yourself.
Susie Wolf.
And Toto did once liken me to a donkey.
Every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.